had the honor to give the MIT commencement address, but here's the thing. I really don't like public speaking because I feel like it makes me more nervous than the average speaker. But since the main theme of my speech is about putting yourself out there to try new things in order to improve and eventually conquer them, consider my nervous stumbles just a meta object lesson. So without further ado, I give you me.
Good afternoon, esteemed faculty, distinguished guests, relieved parents, bored siblings, confused pets, and of course, the 2023 graduating class of MIT. It is indeed a warm welcome. It's hot, and you know what I love to do on a beautiful, sunny, 95-degree summer day? Wear a big black blanket.
We can already see at the start of Mark Rober's presentation, there's a lot of humor. We can see his open gestures here at the moment, and that it's going to be going to be an interesting presentation. Frankly, it's a fantastic speech. If I can pick one tiny hole, he did say one, just one in a minute so far. But yeah, it's really hard to find areas for him to improve as his speech and presentation here is just so good.
At least I'm up here in the shade. You'd think the best engineering school on the planet could design a bigger awning for everyone. It's for next year. Standing here before you is weird. I feel this pressure to give some timeless advice that will endure. Despite our world changing at an unprecedented pace, the world is so different even from 4 years ago. For example, for the undergrads, you are the first graduating class to have persevered through a global pandemic, just as this is the first commencement speech written entirely by ChatGPT. The tech is still very new, so if I make any grammatical errors or threaten to end all human life, that did not come from me. That's the robot. At this point, I should probably tell your parents who I am. I'm Mark Rober, a former Apple and NASA mechanical engineer who became a YouTuber. And yes, I know to some of you it sounds like I just said I quit the MBA to work at Foot Locker, or I traded a Picasso for an NFT of a stoned monkey. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I sort of feel at home here because Buzz Aldrin went to MIT, and just like me, Buzz was a NASA engineer, only Buzz stuck with it and became one of the first humans to set foot on the moon, whereas I quit to become the first human to sprinkle porch pirates with glitter and fart spray.
So we can see here that he's using lots of different ways to engage his audience. He's talking a little bit about his background, how he worked for NASA and Apple, and also talking about some well-known individuals such as Buzz Aldrin, of course. It's a great way to engage the audience through storytelling and talking about people that the audience will know.
It's on YouTube. Your kids will explain it at dinner. But whether it's seeking karmic justice for package thieves or building an obstacle course for squirrels in my backyard, I plan my monthly YouTube videos really far out in advance. In fact, I've already decided what my June 2053 video will be, and it's going to be a collab with all of you. It's going to be a retrospective look at all the amazing things this MIT graduating class of 2023 has accomplished. In fact, this right now is the video intro. So if you've ever wanted to be in one of my videos, this is your chance. Now, will YouTube still be around in 30 years? Hopefully, unless Elon buys it. But here's the thing, the degree to which you positively impact the world is the degree to which you'll be featured in the video. So in order to increase your chances of making the cut, I want to give you 3 pieces of advice based off my life experience.
So we can see here, he uses a phrase. So here's the thing. It's good to have phrases like this that you use in your speeches or presentations that can attract the attention of the audience. So here's the thing. You know he's going to talk about something really, really important. And secondly, he's going to give you not one, not two, but 3 pieces of advice. There's a lot of evidence that we remember things in threes. So in your presentations, if you can structure your presentation in 3 parts or give 3 different points, it's a great way to make it easy for you to prepare and deliver and easy for your audience to digest.
The first bit of advice is to moisturize when giving a commencement speech, is to embrace naive optimism. What do I mean by naive optimism? Actually, before I go any further, usually in my YouTube videos, when I get to like the juicy part, I'm not really used to this public speaking thing, so the music kicks in. So if you'll just give me a moment and hit this button, trust me, this is gonna be better for both of us. Here we go. Right here, let's see. There we go. All right, that's better. Okay, what do I mean by naive optimism? Naive optimism means it's easier to be optimistic about your future when you're sort of naive about what lies ahead, when you don't know what you don't know. As an example, think back on the first week at MIT, how naive you were about the number of all-nighters and cans of Red Bull that would be required to be sitting where you are right now. In fact, you guys drank so much caffeine, I'm surprised you're even sitting at all. If you truly understood what would be required, that discouragement might have prevented you from even starting. Sometimes it's an advantage not to be the expert with all the experience. There's no reputational risk, so it's easier to try new things and approach them from a fresh, first principles approach. Naive optimism can also help when faced with a big life decision, when you feel like you want to know the results before you decide, but the true outcome is simply unknowable. Naive optimism means you have the irrational confidence of a child learning to walk or a mom learning to TikTok. And you pick what you think is the best path and just move forward, knowing there's more than one trail that leads to the top of Mount Fuji. It's okay that you don't know exactly what you want to be doing 20 years from now or what you want to have accomplished. And by the way, even if you do know, it doesn't matter because you're wrong. Anyone who tells you they knew they'd be where they're at 20 years ago is either lying or delusional or a time traveler or Pat Sajak. Life is like trying to cross a big flowing river with lots of rocks and boulders strewn about. If you want to cross the river, you have to start on the bank and look at the first several rocks in front of you. You can wiggle them with your toe and sort of scan a few boulders out, but at some point you've just got to pick one and jump because the river is dynamic and always changing. If the first rock in this metaphor is a hobby, let curiosity and passion guide your initial step. If the first rock represents your professional career, take curiosity and passion into account, but you should also weigh what you're good at and what the world needs, even if the world might not know they need it yet. Whichever one you'd pick, the real secret is to dominate it. Obsessively study it from every angle, master it. Now, from your position of more secure footing, you can reevaluate the river, and you'll find you've got a few more rocks available that you couldn't even see from where you started, so you could continue on your journey.
We can see here that he's using a lot of analogies and metaphors, talking about crossing a river, taking steps, different stepping stones, etc. So this is a good way to use different patterns of language to engage the audience and get you to think.
Instead of putting the pressure on myself to create some master life plan, this attitude of naive optimism combined with dedication, enthusiasm, and the willingness to jump from my current safe rock to the next is what I feel has led me from college to NASA to YouTube to eventually landing on this rock of giving the commencement speech at MIT. There's no way I could have predicted that path when I was exactly in your shoes 20 years ago. So cross your river one rock at a time, but do it with the naive optimism that it's all going to work out. Let that be your North Star. If you actually knew how cold the river can get or how long it takes to recover from a sprained ankle if you slipped, your knowledge might get in the way. So have faith in yourself. You're about to get a degree from MIT, so you've obviously made some pretty great decisions so far. So embrace your inexperience and keep taking leaps forward. And apologies to all the civil engineering majors who have been grumbling, sitting there, saying, if he wants to cross this river so bad, why does he just build a suspension bridge? Because it's my metaphor, all right? Back off. And now for some real talk. You're gonna take that leap of faith, land on a rock, and only then realize it's not as stable as your foot wiggle had predicted, and you're gonna fall into the river sometimes. That leads to my second of 3 pieces of advice to maximize your chance of positively impacting the world and making the video cut, which is to frame your failures. You can tell it's the juicy part because the music's back. To illustrate what I mean by this, I asked 50,000 of my YouTube followers that subscribe to my channel to play a simple computer programming puzzle that I made. But what they didn't know is that I had served up 2 slightly different versions of the puzzle. In one, if you failed the puzzle, you didn't lose any of your starting 200 points, and you were prompted to try again. Whereas in the other, if you didn't succeed, you were also prompted to try again, but I said I was taking away 5 of those starting 200 points. That was the only difference. And even though they were no value in the real world, no one will ever see these completely fake, meaningless internet points. Those who didn't lose those points attempted to solve the puzzle 2.5 times more and saw success 16% more of the time. And because 50,000 people took the test, those results are super statistically significant. Basically, those who didn't frame losing in a negative light, stuck with it for longer, saw more success, and learned more. And I think a great example of this in real life is video games. When Super Mario Bros. First came out, my friends and I became obsessed with making it to the castle and rescuing Princess Peach from the evil Bowser. We'd get to school and ask each other, dude, what level did you make it to? Did you pass the game? We never asked each other for details on all the different ways we might have died. This was before Call of Duty. When it comes to video games like this, no one ever picks up the controller for the first time, falls in the pit right away and thinks, I'm so ashamed. That was such a failure. I'm never doing this again. How am I gonna break it to Luigi? I murdered his brother. What really happens is you think, okay, I gotta remember there's a pit there. Next time, I'm gonna come at it with a bit more speed. The focus and obsession is about beating the game, not how dumb you might look if you get hit by a sliding green shell. And as a direct result of that attitude, of learning from but not being focused on the failures, we got really good and learned a ton in a very short amount of time. And in my personal and work life, I've dealt with my share of sliding green shells. I still feel like every video we make each month, there's a moment where it seems everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. And those failures can be gut-wrenching, and they can sting real bad. But they sting like missing that one key Mario long jump right at the end of level 8-1. And then right after that, really quickly it turns in, okay, what did we just learn from that? What should we try differently from next time?
So we can see here in his speech, Mark Rober is talking about video games. The audience are young, they're graduates. The chances are a lot, or at least quite a few of them, like video games. They'll be aware of Super Mario, World of Warcraft, etc., Grand Theft Auto. And he's talking about metaphors, about playing video games. And again, uses a lot of humor. But in the end, there's a message that when you make mistakes, don't focus on those mistakes, just learn from them, improve and get better. So storytelling is so important when making a speech or making a presentation. So when you make a speech or a presentation in the future, think about what stories can you tell. Use humor if you like, if that works for you, depending on the context, but always try and have a message at the end of the story. There shouldn't just be a story for the sake of it. There should be some sort of key message or learning point that comes out of the story.
And this concept of life gamification is more than just have a positive attitude or never give up, because those imply you have to fight against your true desire to quit. And I feel like when you frame a challenge or a learning process in this way, you actually want to do it. It feels natural to ignore the failure and try again. In the same way a toddler will want to keep trying to stand up, or in the same way you want to keep playing Super Mario Bros., or in the same way half the people who attempted my coding puzzle had a desire to stick with it 2.5 times longer. The framing of their failures made it so they wanted to keep trying and learning. And that's exactly why the most meaningful high fives of my adolescence were when I said, dude, I finally beat Bowser last night. Probably goes without saying, but girls didn't talk to me till I was much older. And in case you're like, yeah, but my real life would just be so much better if my top 5 challenges disappear. Would it? I'd like to point out that if Super Mario Brothers was just jumping over one pit and then you rescued Princess Peach, no one would play it. Where's the risk and the reward? Where's the challenge? There's no ultimate feeling of satisfaction. The degree you're getting today means so much to you precisely because of all the struggle and setbacks that you've had to endure. So if you want to cross the river of life, you're gonna get wet, you're gonna have to backtrack, and that's not a bug, that's a feature. Frame those failures and slips like a video game, and not only will you learn more and do it faster, but it will make all the successful jumps along the way that much sweeter. All right, now I've got some good news, which is that you're not crossing the river alone. For my third and final bit of advice is to foster your relationships. Nice. A sad truth about getting older is life gets busier and busier, and it gets harder and harder to make really close friends like you did.
So here, he's using the music again that's really famous in his YouTube videos, and he's doing something a little bit different, a little bit unique. So obviously, depending on the context of your presentations, if it's a very formal presentation, you don't want to do something too crazy. But just think, what can you do that's going to be a bit different in your presentations? Instead of what most people do, just the traditional introduce yourself, speak, and answer questions at the end. Can you tell stories? Can you play a video? Can you play some music? Can you have some audience interaction? Think, what could you do that's a bit different in your presentation? And the chances are it's going to be more interesting, more useful, and you'll be able to keep the attention of the audience for much longer.
Here at school. And this isn't great because we evolved to be social, cooperative creatures, right? Like 50,000 years ago, conditions were much harsher. So those who were more inclined to cooperate with their fellow humans were also much more likely to succeed and pass on those cooperation genes. So we've inherited these brains designed for social interaction, and we are hardwired to cooperate with other people. And look, I don't blame you if you want to cast aside advice from a guy who makes a living trying to outwit squirrels, but I wouldn't recommend doing that to 6 million years of evolutionary programming. Because in today's society, it's really convenient just to isolate yourself. You could attend the board meeting from your kitchen table, you can order food in the shower, you can bank on the toilet, you can even look for a new apartment without leaving your apartment. It's easier to stay anonymous in our big cities versus the small tribes of our ancestors where everyone knew each other, which means we've got to actively work at fostering meaningful relationships. And because I know this can be harder for some more than others, here's a life hack I've found that really helps. Confirmation bias is when your brain ignores evidence that doesn't support your beliefs, and then it cherry picks the evidence that does. And generally, when people hear this term, they think it's a broken, unscientific way for our brains to approach the world. And this is true, but you could sort of judo flip it to your advantage. The trick is to positively apply confirmation bias to your relationships. If you assume good intentions on the part of your friends and family, and you tell yourself you're lucky to have them, your brain will naturally work to find evidence to support that. That's just how our brains work. If you tell yourself that your fellow humans are inherently good, your brain will find examples of it everywhere, and that will reinforce your outlook. The opposite, unfortunately, is also true. Basically, whether you think the world and everyone in it is out to hurt you or help you, you're right. Studies have shown that the best predictor of divorce is if the couple assumes bad intentions in their partner's actions, or if you marry Kanye. But if you get it in your head that your partner is selfish or inconsiderate or willfully refusing to take out the garbage, that creates a negative feedback loop of confirmation bias, seeking to find further evidence that your spouse is a jerk, even when good faith efforts are being made. And this hack works not just for spouses, friends, and family, but even total strangers who might infuriate you. And look, I agree with you, they're wrong. But don't forget, as George Carlin pointed out, anyone who's driving slower than you is an idiot, and anyone driving faster than you is a maniac. Fostering your relationship closes out my list of 3 bits of advice because that may be where your impact is the greatest. Due to a challenging upbringing, my mom barely graduated high school, but she took being a mom and instilling values in her children really seriously. As such, she's the single biggest influence on my life by far. She passed away over a decade ago from ALS 6 months before I ever released my first YouTube video. But I love the idea that the ripples from her influence are still being felt as strongly as they ever have through the work that I try and do today. If anything I've said today has resonated with you, in my mind, it's a direct result of her commitment to this third piece of advice. So
we can see here that he's telling a really, really personal story towards the end of his presentation about his mum passing away, to really, really connect with the audience, and he's going to have his communicate his final point, his final key message, key takeaway that he wants the audience to remember. So when making your presentations, obviously depending on the context, try to weave in some personal stories, and then that you can relate to your topic, and it can help you build an even stronger connection with your audience. Because at the end of the day, everybody loves stories. You know, I'm sure when you were a child, your parents told stories to you, and it was a great way to connect. And people, we just remember stories for longer, rather than remembering data.
leverage confirmation bias to enhance your relationships as you cooperate to cross the river. Train your brain to assume good intentions and try to remember if someone cuts you off on the freeway, maybe they're not out to get you, maybe they just have diarrhea. For piece of advice number 4, engage in occasional playful anarchy. But Mark, you told us you were only going to give us 3 pieces of advice. Boom! Here's a 4th, because why not? I am playing music in a commencement speech because why not? Is not ending your speech with pump-up music just objectively better? Or like how these graduation robes and hats are just objectively silly. Why shouldn't I take my own 4th piece of advice right now and engage in some playful anarchy? Anybody can toss their hat in the air. We see it at every graduation, but few have dared to make it actually fly. I bet Buzz Aldrin never tried this. You know what? Time out. This is actually a great opportunity to review everything we just talked about. To my first point, I will embrace my naive optimism that my hat will actually get airborne. But if not, to my second point, if it goes haywire and I accidentally blow up E53, I can reframe the failure as an opportunity to renovate a very old and sketchy building. Maybe this time we'll even add a few windows. And then to my third point, when I get sued by the faculty, I will foster the relationship I have with my defense lawyers. Because settling with MIT over damages will bring us all closer together. And so now, after turning on my hat, I've done my part and filmed a banger of an intro to our upcoming collab 30 years from now, which means all that's left to do is your part, to go out and change the world for the better. Congratulations, MIT class of 2023. You totally got this.
What a fantastic presentation that is. Of course, he's speaking to hundreds of people at MIT, and the presentations that you make might be for your class, might be in a meeting for a small group, or even maybe a large audience. But there are lots of things that we can learn here from Mark Rober's presentation. Just like Mark Rober gave 3 things that he would like everyone to take away from this presentation, I'm going to just highlight 3 areas that he did particularly well in this presentation. Number 1, he used humor really, really well. To keep people's attention, humor is a good tool. You do need to be careful, and it does depend on the type of presentation you make, but if you are quite amusing and you can use humor effectively, this is a great way to engage your audience. Secondly, he did some unexpected things. He used music, which is quite rare in a presentation. Also, what he did at the end was a kind of like a wow moment. So he did quite a few different things that are slightly not typical when presenting. So when you make a presentation, think what different things you can do than normal. Maybe get everyone to stand up, or get everyone to put their hands up if they agree with a question that you ask, for example, or a statement that you ask. And thirdly and finally, he had a real positive tone of voice, and he really used the power of his voice. There was so much positive energy in the way that he spoke, and it really helped to engage the audience. You could tell, well, he said he was nervous at the start, but he didn't really seem nervous. He was really, really positive. He was smiling. He was making jokes. He was enjoying it. So you could feel that he was enjoying it, and there's more chance the audience will enjoy it. So next time when you make a presentation or a speech, do your best to prepare. Think, what stories can you tell? What techniques can you engage the audience? And do your best to enjoy it. And if you do that, I'm sure it will be a big success. If you found this video useful, please write in the comments what you enjoyed about Mark Rober's presentation and what you're going to try and apply. And do like and subscribe for more videos like this. See you in the next one.